Joe, can you just give us an idea of, what it means to have Rob back in the side, particularly the chance to play in front of his, home crowd?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get the chance to ask Rob himself. He's just happy to be back, trained really well today, and we're happy to have him back, obviously. I did think that Nick Champion de Crepney acquitted himself incredibly well in a furnace last week, making his Test debut. But the experience that Bobby brings in, and he probably brings confidence to other players as well because of his experience and his ability, to take the ball forward.
Will Skelton as well, and Laney Gleeson, two pretty big, powerful inclusions as well, right? How huge is that?
Yeah, it's great. And some of those decisions were made harder by what the bench did last week. I think Tom Hooper's very unlucky to miss out, but Will and his experience just allows us to have a look at something slightly different this week, because I thought Tom came off the bench and did really well. So Will has accumulated that experience. He knows what it's like to play these players. He's played them regularly, and he's won against them regularly, certainly in Europe, in the big European games that they've played.
You used the word submissive for the parts of the first half last week. With the team you've named, how determined are you that hasn't happened again?
Yeah, again, we didn't have the intention last week, and we don't have the intention this week of being submissive. I just think that they played on the edge really well. They got in amongst us, sometimes just beside us, which made it very hard to play. And we're hopeful that we will be able to take that to them this week and keep them on the back foot a little bit more. But there's a lot of work that goes into doing that, and we've got to make sure that we create clear pictures and that we initiate that momentum. One of the things last week we didn't quite get some of the line-out platforms that we used to, and you can initiate a little bit of momentum from those, and when we didn't get that, we were a little bit static, and then it's very hard to reignite that momentum if you don't get it initially.
Not quite the street smart enough with the line seizing on, the refereeing allowing pretty borderline stuff with offside and around the ruck, and you need to adapt quicker.
Look, it is what it is, and that's an adjustment that experience gives you. You can adjust in game. I don't think we're naive by any means, but we're learning. And last week was a fantastic learning opportunity for a 10 who's having his first Test start, and a guy who's making his Test debut. Those guys, and even for some of the new guys, the guys like Joseph Suali'i and Max Jorgensen, Harry Potter, amongst them, they might have 10 caps between them. So for those guys, every time they get to go out against such a strong opposition, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for them to get a bit of growth, and also just to acquit themselves and grow their own self-belief that they can compete at that level.
Would you like to see your team be a bit more aggressive, like I guess the First Nations Pacifica team kind of showed, I guess, what you can do when you're a bit more combative? Did you feel like your team was a bit nice, I suppose?
Yeah, we don't want to be nice, and we don't want to be submissive. I think one of the risks, I thought the First Nations Pacifica team did a fantastic job, but after 31 minutes, they've conceded 13 line breaks. If we do that in a Test match, we could be a lot further behind than the FNP team were on Tuesday evening. So we've got to make sure we get the balance right, that some of that aggressive line speed that they brought, we've got to bring that, but we've also got to make sure that it's connected, because when you leak like that and they can play in behind you, then it's very hard to get back in front of them. So 13 line breaks to 2 after 30 minutes, we can't afford to have that stat.
Joe, with the 6-2 bench split, was there the thinking you're around forward heavy bench?
It's not forward heavy, it's replacements for guys who are coming back from injury. We know that we've got Will Skelton, Bobby Valetini and Langy Gleeson all coming back from injury. So we're just trying to cover that as best we can, and we feel like we can cover the backs with some versatility amongst the guys that we've got there. And we mixed it up a little bit at training today. Now, again, it's very difficult because we've had 3 or 4 weeks together after a 7-month hiatus, so it's very difficult to suddenly factor a whole lot of changes in. So it's not something that we would have done by design, but to get some of those players back in and to give ourselves the security of like-for-like players to come off the bench or positional coverage off the bench, we just felt that was probably the best balance that we could get.
Joe, there's not many players in the world who are physical size as well. Just what does that add other than thinking the obvious stuff?
Sorry. Could we just go again?
Yeah, sorry.
Is that all right?
I'm just saying
Thanks.
There's not many players in the world who are as big as Will is. So what does that give you, other than the obvious stuff of just physicality, I guess?
Yeah, I think one of the key things with Will is he's a very calm influence. He's a big man. He's big-hearted as well. Hopefully not on Saturday, but his experience and his history of being involved in successful teams, particularly with La Rochelle in Europe, I think it just gives other players confidence. You know, we've got a group of players who haven't won too much in recent times, whether it's in Super Rugby or whether it's internationally, and so, you know, I think building confidence is an incremental thing. You've got to get small wins here and there. You know, winning the second half, it just helps a little bit, but you know, we know that we've got to put more and more, stack more and more of those winning moments together to try to get a result, because, you know, this weekend is pivotal.
As you've mentioned, he seems to have been a bit of a Leinster whisperer over the years with with those finals and stuff like that. And he's gone very Leinster heavy, as you've probably seen now.
Yep.
Is that an element too, that he might have to woodwork some of those lads?
I'm not so sure. You know, I thought in some of those finals you had some other guys who were pretty useful. Botia in one of those finals was an absolute freak, I thought. Hastoy kicked so well. There were a number of players, Siatini, that played really well. So I think Will, the first thing he'd do is put his hand up and say, I was part of a connected group, and he was certainly a big part of it, because he's a big human, but I just think he brings a confidence and a calmness to the group.
And just on this week as a whole, does it feel do or die? Like you have to win to keep the series alive, don't you? But you're talking a lot about learnings and developing for a future. Is it all on this week, or are you kind of looking at a bigger picture? Like, how can you?
Wow, we're incredibly short-term focused. We just want to win. We just want to train well today, and then we want a really good captain's run, and then we want to stack enough good moments to be right in the game next week, this weekend. So, you know, next week we can't control. So all we can do is stay short-term focused, and we've got a long-term plan. You know. But somewhere along that, you can't suddenly say that you're going to have an experienced 10. That has to be a longer-term plan. We're not going to expect the same thing from Tom Liner and Finn Russell, because Finn's been at the top of the game for so long. So those are some of the things that we don't necessarily balance off against the opposition. We've just got to stay focused on ourselves and our growth, and try to accelerate it as best we can, because we don't really control anything else other than our preparation and then how we build our confidence to perform.
Is there a time, with all the teams you coach, is there a time in the team's development where they need to just deliver a big victory? Like, this would be enormous, wouldn't it? 100,000 odd at the MCG, level the series. Like, as marquee statement victories go, it would be bad, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd certainly love that to happen. I guess I would never be outcome focused, and I've I've been lucky to have been on the periphery of some fantastic outcomes over the last 20 years of coaching professionally, but this would be special inevitably, and it'd be special for this group. And I think it would accelerate a little bit of their growth as well, because in terms of gaining confidence, it's hard to top competing with the best. And at the same time, it's like any sport. If you play against a team that are stacked and maybe have more experience than you do, and have a richness of talent across the board, then that's how you start to extend your own performance. And I'd love to see some of the players really extend their own performances. And I honestly felt we saw a little bit of it particularly in that second half last Saturday. But I also am a realist. I know that last Saturday will count for nothing at kickoff, and those last 25 minutes, we won't get to live those again. We've got to be able to create those again.
Joe, does this say that the 3 changes you made are all up front? Does that mean that you're happy with the back line, or is maybe the fact you've gone 6-2, has that affected that as well?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both of those things, and probably we had a couple of guys who were in doubt in the back line. I think there's a few guys who were a little bit unlucky. Dylan Peach was playing really well for us last November and got injured against England, and he came back. He missed the back end of the Force season, got back in and played that game against the Lions, played very well, I thought. And so, you know, he's striving to get back in there, but I also thought that Harry Potter and Max Jorgensen did a good job. So I guess you're trying to just reward players who've performed well and also build some consistency. As I said, it's our 3rd game in 9 months, and so if you're chopping and changing too much, then I think you can destabilise your own growth, and that's the last thing we want to do at this stage. You know, 3 changes in the pack, that's significant enough without a whole lot of other changes. You know, there were other guys who I felt did really well coming off the bench, who are probably putting pressure on the starters, and that's a good situation to have for us.
Joe, Lucan and Taniela, obviously Lucan's had 3 really strong games against the Lions. It would have been tricky to play on Tuesday and then again on Saturday, but why has he fallen down the pecking order?
Well, he wasn't playing. You know, he missed the back half of Super Rugby, and then he played against the Lions for the Reds, and this was a way to get him enough games under his belt to get closer to where we needed him to be. And you know, I've spoken to Lucan since the game, since the Pacifica game, spoke to him before the game, and you know, we've got him pretty close by. And to be fair, I thought Darcy Swain was very good as well. If you have a look back at the line out and around the field, probably Lucan captured the headlines, maybe, I'm not sure, but Darcy Swain did really well as well. So there's a couple of guys that we're certainly still in conversation with and can add value going further ahead and maybe even in the shorter term.
Joe, is that a bit of a cop-out though? Because there's about 6 guys that missed the second half of the Super season, like Max Jorgensen, Matt Pesler, you know, JDS only played 6 games all year. So, yeah, is there more to the fact that you want to see other elements of Lucan?
Well, they're not First Nations or Pacifica players, so they're not actually allowed to play in that team. We had enough trouble getting people to play in that team. So I think it was opportunities spread across players, and we try to spread that across. You mentioned Matt Fessler. He went back and played against the Reds, and then he got that game under his belt, played well, and came in and played last week. So it is a balancing act, and you know, with the nature of some of the teams and the availability to play in those teams, we've tried to balance it as best we can.
Joe, maybe Will Skelton's presence around the squad had some impact on not naming Harry Wilson as a permanent captain, I'm not sure, but any thought on making Harry the man going forward permanently?
Yeah, to be honest, it's not something we've talked about. Harry's done a great job. Harry's captain again this week, and Harry is very comfortable with how that is at the moment. So we have a pretty strong leadership group, and those guys they tend to share the responsibility to lead the team. And in the huddle today, the guy speaking wasn't Harry. You know, it is very mixed in how those discussions are taken on, and we like the fact that the responsibility is shared. Harry doesn't have a massive experience of captaining teams. He hasn't done it that often, so it's still something he's coming to terms with and learning about.
Joe, just checking that Rob Valetini has trained all week and he's 100%. Can you give some insight into his training week?
Yeah, as I said, he trained really well this week. Trained really well on Tuesday, and we only trained Tuesday, Thursday really. We did a light sort of movement and organisational session on Monday, but nothing that would be strenuous at all. So really getting through Tuesday and Thursday was really important for Rob. But Rob did elements of last week's training as well, and so it was just making sure that he was ready for a full training week, which he completed this week.
What did you make of the Lions team?
Yeah, I got a glance at it on the way in. There's a couple of changes, but it's pretty consistent. I saw that Bundy was in at 12 ahead of Sione, but the back line was pretty similar. The forward pack, Andrew Porter in for Alice Genge, and Joe McCarthy, I think he sustained a foot injury. I spoke to Joe briefly after the game, and Ollie Chesham has come in there. As I say, I only got a glance at it, so I'm not sure of all the changes. But a lot of consistency in their selection, I thought.
Owen Farrell's in on the bench. What could he potentially bring?
Sorry?
Owen Farrell? Is he on the bench?
Yeah, again, he looked like he was directing a lot of the traffic on Tuesday. I'm not sure. I was an observer like everyone else, but he certainly appeared to be demonstrating those leadership skills, that ability to help other players see the game and adapt to what's required. And so I think his ability to bring experience off the bench and a cool head, plus he's probably quite versatile, and where you can put him as far as 10 or 12 is concerned, he's pretty comfortable in either of those positions. And it looked on Tuesday as if Marcus Smith got picked up maybe a knock, and so Owen coming in there after Finn Smith played a big innings on Tuesday is probably not a massive surprise.
I know that you'll have your captain's run tomorrow, but have you had a chance to have a look at the MCG? I mean, the pitch looks so small on the ground. It's a long way away from the fans. Yeah,
I was coaching with the All Blacks there a few years ago, so I've had the experience of coaching there before against the Wallabies, but I certainly appreciate the size of the stadium and that the pitch does look a little way away, but it wasn't that different from Marvel, where you look at the size of the pitch that the AFL players play on. It's a very big pitch. No wonder they have rolling subs and get plenty of time to go on and off. We're not afforded that luxury for our players, so they're just going to have to muscle up and keep going.
And just on your
Last
subs,
two, please.
but realistically, how much game time are you hoping to get out of Valetini on Saturday?
Yeah, he tends to play full games for us, but I doubt whether that's going to be the case. If you have a look at his history last year, and he's been incredibly resilient. I think He's missed very few Test matches since he made his debut, and he's one of those players who finds a bit in reserve. So it will be very much we'll get to half time. We'll have a look how he's travelling, and then during that second half, just again see how he's travelling. We feel like with 2 loose forwards on the bench that we've got some cover there for him. So we'll be keen not to run the tank empty completely, because we feel we've got some good support to come off the bench.
So we now swap to European referees for Test 2 and 3. How does that change things?
It doesn't probably change it too much, because it's the same team of 3 or team of 5, or and for us, we just have to adapt to what they allow, and that's something that, again, as a less experienced team is part of the learning process, and while we see it as a pinnacle event, inevitably, when you have less experience, you are still learning, and that's something that we're trying to fast track as much as we possibly can. But we've had Andrea before against Ireland at the end of November last year, and what was a very tight game, against one of the top teams in the world, and so. I think we've just got to focus on ourselves, really. The referee, mostly they know the laws. There's one contentious one about taking a throw in front of the mark and what the consequence of that is. Harry had an idea of what not allowing it to go 5 metres was, and expressed that, but was told that wasn't the rule. But those are some of the things that Harry's growing in, and I thought that was really good from Harry. So that's one of the things that I think, having had experienced players in the past, and not necessarily even captain, like even when Johnny wasn't captain, I think he was a bit of a handful for referees, because his law knowledge was incredibly good.
Don Donaldson, he covers 10 and 15, but is he also your 12, 13 cover people?
We've got Harry Potter's played a fair bit of midfield, so we feel like we've got some midfield coverage there, and so Ben can cover the sort of back 3, and we can get some coverage with Harry in the midfield if needs be.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
I'll pop back with Angus and Tom.